Voters in Iran have chosen a new president. The former health minister, Masoud Pezeshkian, garnered well over 2 million votes more than his hardline rival in Friday's runoff election. He was the only reform candidate allowed to run, but his ability to deliver change in the shadow of Iran's supreme leader is limited.
A new public face of Iran's leadership. Reformist lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian will now become the country's next president, with his win announced by election authorities.
Based on the numbers, Mr. Masoud Pezeshkian is introduced as the elected president in the 14th presidential election of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
After the announcement, Pezeshkian posted a statement on the social media platform X, calling for unity and support from his countrymen.
Dear people of Iran, the elections are over and this is just the beginning of our path together. The difficult path ahead of us will not be paved except with your support, empathy and trust. I extend my hand to you and swear by my dignity that I will not leave you alone on this path. Do not leave me alone.
He campaigned on promises of reviving the 2015 nuclear deal with Western powers, saying he wants to end Iran's isolation. With millions of Iranians frustrated by the lack of real choice, slightly fewer than half of eligible voters cast ballots. While some of his supporters took to the streets to celebrate, the mood in the capital has been largely sober.
Honestly speaking, I just hope the prices go down and jobs are easily found for young people, and that's it. I do not have any other special feelings. I'm happy that Mr. Pezeshkian was elected.
With Pezeshkian, the sanctions will likely be lifted, and that's very good.
I'm really not invested, because these candidates only make slogans. And when they take power, they do nothing for the people. So I have no feelings for Mr. Pezeshkian.
Pezeshkian will be taking over a country facing internal divisions, deep economic problems, and growing international isolation. With most of the power held by the supreme leader, who is unlikely to alter Iran's course, despite voters' plea for change.
Now let's bring in Citrinowicz. He's a research fellow at the Institute for National Security in Tel Aviv, was previously the head of the Iranian strategic branch in Israeli intelligence. Danny, has Masoud Pezeshkian given any indication how he will handle the conflict with Israel?
Well, I think that Israel won't be its top priority, that's for sure. And we have to remember that the strategic decision regarding Israel is being taken by the supreme leader and not the president himself. So I don't think there will be a dramatic change. But it is important to say that now we have a moderate president that will sit in the National Security Council of Iran, actually the body that recommends the supreme leader what to do in an event like escalation with Israel. So I think despite the fact there won't be a dramatic change, if in soon or later Israel and Iran will find themselves in a clash, I think the fact that we have a moderate president will take its toll and will have an effect on Iran's decision-making process.
What effect will this have on traditional Iranian allies such as Hamas and Hezbollah?
Well, again, those things are being called by the supreme leader with the help of Quds Force and the RGC. I think there won't be dramatic change, but it is important to say one important thing, that we saw in the president candidate or president run, we saw how Quds Force commander Ismail Reini is actually intervening in the election, trying to push Jalili to let go and let Orly Baf win. And that, I think, is an important indication. Despite the fact there won't be a dramatic change, I think Quds Force members are afraid that we will return back to the era of Rouhani versus Soleimani, a president that actually will put a lot of obstacles in front of Quds Force activity. So for the short run, I don't see any change. But for the longer run, basically, and when we are looking at what Pezeshkian is trying to do, mainly reach an agreement with the West on the nuclear program of Iran, then I think Quds Force will be alarmed that it will have an influence on the ability to act in the Middle East.
So how much influence then will Pezeshkian really have? Where else can we see or expect a real difference?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question. As we all know, yes, the Supreme Leader calls the shots on the whole strategic decisions of Iran. But it is important to say that the president has a lot of capabilities. We already mentioned the fact that he's heading the National Security Council of Iran. He's appointing the cabinet. Of course, he needs to be approved, but he can appoint his deputies. And for that reason, I think that we'll see two main things. First, he will try to ease the internal pressure in Iran. And first and foremost, of course, after that, he will try to reach a deal with the West regarding the Iran nuclear program, as he mentioned in his presidential campaign. Now, we'll have to wait and see who will be elected in the U.S. presidency elections. But I think once, whether Trump or Biden will re-elect, then we'll see Pezeshkian trying his hardest, together with Mohammad Zarif, the former foreign minister of Iran. They both will try to reach an agreement that will ease the economic pressure on Iran by lifting the sanctions.
Yalda Zarbakhch is the head of DW's Persian service. I asked her how significant Masoud Pezeshkian's victory is for the country.
Well, Melissa, there's actually only one significance in this election, is that Iranians made the regime and made the world understand that they did not vote any of these candidates. They did not vote a president. What they did vote for actually is a clear no to the Islamic Republic. Let us not forget that over 60% of the population, and these are official numbers, did not vote in the first round and even now, but we can assume that maybe only 15% of the population went to vote, and the regime is very aware of that. So they actually knew that this is kind of a referendum, this election, and this is why it was so important to them to kind of, get people to vote. And I think actually it's very likely that the so-called reformist candidate, which is actually a very misleading term, but I come to that later, that Pezeshkian has been vetted actually only for that, to make people come to vote, but people in Iran did not fall for that. And I think also that the Supreme Leader Khamenei, actually, Pezeshkian was his first choice, and I think they wanted from the beginning to have this so-called reformist candidate as a president.
I think that's a great point you make about the so-called, I also mentioned earlier, more reform-minded, right, in quotation marks. So it sounds like there won't be much of a difference with Pezeshkian in charge, or will there be a difference in terms of how he will lead, given the power of the Supreme Leader? Domestically, nothing will change. And people know that Iranians have understood, or have, let's say, bitterly experienced throughout the last decades, that no matter what kind of so-called reformer or moderate candidate will become president, nothing will change. Not only because they don't have the power to change a lot of things, because the last will and decisions are by the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, but only because reformists are part of the system. They don't want a regime change. So let's maybe imagine it as reformists and hardliners being two wings of the system, and both contribute to keep this system alive and survive. The only thing that why we're, they're talking about maybe reformists is that kind of making or showing the West that there is some sort of opposition, which is not the case, and Iranians have understood that. Right.
But in the West, we still think that there must be some sort of difference.
So externally, how much of a difference will this make on some of the key questions that people are concerned about?
Well, there is one difference between Pezeshkian and Jalili, at least from what he said, is that he's more open to negotiations with the West, whereas Jalili was saying that we only need Russia and China and not the West. So I think that right now, with the economy, which is really not going well in Iran, and as long as maybe, for instance, Biden is president, or it is possible that Trump will get next president, they want kind of gets to negotiate
Got
with the
it.
West in the hope of lifting sanctions. But we have to really not forget, many people in Iran are worried that that would actually lead, a reformist candidate will lead to EU and the West, the US, forgetting the people in Iran fighting for women life freedom,
Right.
and not, paying attention to that anymore, just to negotiate with the Islamic Republic.
Yalda Zarbakhch, thank you so much for joining us.